What's up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabril, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, but we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, what you been playing?
Yeah, so everything pretty much that I was playing took a pause, and obviously I got swept in the storm that is Elden Ring. So
Nice.
Everything I've been playing, I stopped. Horizon, I think I was at a good point where I don't need to restart the game when I go back to Horizon. Love Horizon. Just I knew I wasn't going to be able to play both of these games at once. Everything else was on hold, and since release day, I've been playing just Elden Ring. I'm as I clocked in this morning, I think I'm about 18 hours in. So I'm pretty well versed on the gameplay. So it's hard to even say what hasn't been said. I'm a picky Soulsborne fan to premise everything, because I never really played the 3 Dark Souls games. I played the first one. I dabbled in Demon's Souls when it launched on PS5, the remake, Blue Points. I really did love Bloodborne. I beat Bloodborne. It's the only Souls game that I've beaten. So I really liked Bloodborne. And Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, was really great too. I got pretty far in there. Didn't beat it because that game is just ridiculous, as these games are. But Elden Ring is something special. Obviously, yes, at its core, it is a Souls game. It is a super difficult, game. That's what these games are for, with, very little story. But obviously, we know the big difference is this one's open world. And I think that is its biggest saving grace, because despite a few other mechanics that it seems very familiar with the rest of this series, it being open world is it's its first real venture in this from Software, and I gotta give it to them. I don't know how they did it, but they won me over. They implanted themselves in my head, and I can't get enough of this game. I think all the main issues I've had with these games before are semi-remedied in this. We got a dedicated jump button. On top of that, we have, if you get a steed very quickly, that does a double jump itself. So just being able to maneuver in this world with these enemies and your different abilities just feels good. It feels like a game that's not meant to just be hammering you down. Obviously, when you reach enemies and when you reach bosses, you know exactly what you're playing. You're playing a Souls game, and you will get wrecked immediately. So again, I've explored a lot of the game. I do like a lot of it. I'm not going to really mention too much about what its Souls-like stuff is, because it is what it is. Super hard enemies. You got to do some grinding for, instead of souls, this one's runes, to do your upgrades, different classes, different weapons. All that is in a Souls game is here. The one thing that's gotten me through the game, and carrying me and keeping me coming back, is its open world format. I know a lot of people keep saying it's like the Breath of the Wild of Souls game. I get that point. I think it's way more revolutionary than that. The fact that, yes, it's an open world game, but the fact that everywhere I go, and this is really not an exaggeration. Yes, there's paths and bridges, but almost everywhere I go on the map, there's something to do. One of my biggest complaints with Breath of the Wild, and even if you compare some Witcher 3 aspects, is that it's open world for open world's sake, almost. There's just giant sections of nothingness, and it's fine for pictures and art. That's fine, but the fact that in Elden Ring, I'll go over a cliff, and not only could there be a village there to, get items, there could be a huge enemy, there could be a secret boss. Depending on what time of day you go there could be, spirits that can talk to you, that could help you, or they could hurt you. You can, take down these sort of checkpoints where there's a bunch of soldiers, and there could be nothing there besides experience. Or when you do that, then you find there's an underground cave that leads into a whole different section of the map. You have portals that will fly you to a different side of the map. Everywhere I go, there's something to do, and that's something that most open world games have an issue with. I didn't think Elden Ring would be able to do it with the size of the map that I heard they were talking about, but it's there. Everywhere you see, you can go, and it's really interesting, because though I'm missing some of these normal sort of game mechanics, like having a quest log is something we've seen in many, many games. You and I play tons of Ubisoft games, so that Far Cry, that checklist you get ends up being very plumped if you don't start clearing it out. We don't get that in Elden Ring, and sometimes I miss it because I forget what missions I'm doing, and then it takes a long time to try to retract my steps and stuff. But the fact is, the game wants you to be in its game and look. You see a church in the distance. They want you to go to the church and find out what goes on. And it could be a side mission. There could be an enemy. It could be a super weapon. There's just, you never know really what you're going there. So that constant mystery keeps me entertained. Where Breath of the Wild, when you would go, it was either going to be an enemy or one of the repetitive puzzles that you do, realistically. And that's fine for what Breath of the Wild was. Breath of the Wild is already, we're looking at 5 years ago?
Yeah, 2017.
So obviously, I can't knock what it did back then to what open world games are doing now. I just think this is going to change the game for these type of open world games permanently. I think if you release an open world game now that is super empty, even if someone who isn't a Souls fan goes and plays it, most people see, we were just discussing right before the show, everywhere everyone's talking about Elden Ring. You're seeing the memes, you're seeing the Try Fingers meme, you see these memes everywhere, and it is a little ridiculous how much it is, but people see just everywhere how much content is packed into the game, but not just for game's sake. It's for literally the world's sake. The world feels alive, and there's so much to do. So I know it's kind of ranting, but I could literally talk about this game for who knows how long. But I'm really, really impressed with it. My one caveat, I do think that From Software is getting a small pass, and one they don't really. They keep getting. Their games usually do launch a little rough tech-wise. So I understand PC, it's a pretty botched mess over there right now. I've heard they've patched it, but I am playing the PS5 version, native PS5 version on PS5, and it could have used some more time in the oven. I'm not sure why the game was pushed out so far. The game was delayed for so long in general. But a lot of pop-ins. My grass everywhere I go is constantly popping in. Doesn't take away from the experience, but day one the frames were it was just, even on the hard performance mode, those frames were just I was just getting from, it looked like maybe 30 to, it would jump between 30 and 60, and if it was one of those things consistently, I wouldn't complain too much. But when you're getting that scaling constantly, depending where you're spinning your camera, that's not a good look. And it's just little things like that. I haven't had any hard crashes. I haven't had anything like that. The few patches we've gotten in the week that I've been playing it has smoothed a lot of that out. I don't notice when I get a lot of enemies on screen. Obviously, sometimes I see a little chugging, but it's nowhere near what it was those first couple days. So I'm glad that they're quickly on top of it and trying to get it fixed. Again, I don't see why this game couldn't have been delayed one more month, just to smooth it out a little bit more, because the fact that the game was right at launch 97, like on Metacritic, is ridiculous. The game's not a 97. I love the game. No way is it that high. Even just if you're looking at the technical way it launched, you can't just excuse it, because From Software has that issue with every one of their games that come out. Bloodborne was a mess at launch. So yeah, that's all I've been playing. I have a few things I want to get back to. Obviously, Horizon's going to be a big one to get back to. There's things coming up soon that I want to play. So I don't know. I don't have a plan to completely beat Elden Ring before I move on, just because I don't hate myself that much to put myself through that kind of nonsense. But this is where most of my time is going to be until that next game really captivates me, or until the point where I feel like I can't do any more. Without the super grindiness of trying to beat some of these boss in Elden Ring. So that's all I've been playing. What have you been playing? What have you been up to?
Yeah, and one thing about Elden Ring, it's like, God, I want that game so bad. And because I'm in savings mode right now, I had to make a choice between that or Horizon. And so obviously I chose Horizon, and then Elden Ring will be coming at a future date. But it's like I'm seeing all these clips, and I'm like, man, I want that game so bad. It looks so good. It's like suffering. So what I've been playing, major thing has been Horizon also.
Yep.
I'm just below 10 hours, so I haven't played a ton. I haven't been playing as much games lately, but when I do, it's primarily Horizon and kind of like little chunks. No major critiques of this game, actually. Overall, I like it a lot. It's like really scratching an itch. And what I like about this specific Horizon, and it's been a while since I played the first one, so I can't necessarily speak on how it was then. But for this one, what I like about it is every time I go to Horizon, I'm not always necessarily trying to do the same thing. So sometimes I really just want to like bang out some story missions. Other times I kind of want to just chill and like find some encampments or like level up, do some side quests, or kind of just explore, see like some remote corner of the map that I haven't been to yet. The cool thing is they really structure things and segment things in a way that kind of allow you to do that. So very seldomly am I getting like dragged into story things. At any point, if I do like a story mission and I'm like, all right, that's enough of that, I want to do something else, they give you kind of the freedom to do that. So I love the ability to kind of bounce in and out. So my story kind of weaves between all these like side quests, and then pretty much as side quests pop up, I just jump into them. So I'm always like very properly leveled for the story missions, and overall I just really like the way that it's structured. It's a beautiful game. It runs amazingly. And so, yeah, I'm just really, really happy with what they were able to do with Horizon, this one. And it seems like it's really interesting because I think this game is really good and there's a lot of hype around it, but definitely a lot of the hype, and maybe this is a hot take, but I think a lot of the hype for this game was like completely swallowed by Elden Ring, like dramatically. Because the conversations about this game pretty much completely stopped, despite the fact that it's like a major first-party release from Sony. So that's kind of interesting, is just seeing the dialogue completely like evaporate around Horizon. And good thing about Horizon, if it at all has a life cycle of the previous title, is that Frozen Wilds breathed a whole bunch of new life and it introduced a ton of new content. So I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of throw their hat back into the race again later this year. I think that would be really smart. But yeah, Horizon is like a double thumbs up for me. I really love that game. And yeah, there's not too much that I dislike about it. The only, I guess, major critique you can have of it is just like, do I think it's like a massive leap above the first one? Not necessarily. I think the kind of core structure of the first one is definitely very present in the second one. Narratively, I think it's probably a lot more open-ended than the first one. So I could see why somebody playing it might think it's like slow. Especially if you're not like mainlining the storyline. I could see why they think it's like plotting a little bit more than like the first one, which I feel like really got into the conflict a lot quicker than this one. This one, you're really dealing with the fallout of the previous game and then kind of chasing this more ambiguous threat that you don't 100% know too much about quite yet. At least 10 hours in. So I like that, but I could see why that might not resonate with somebody in the same way, and they might find something a little bit more engaging, or even the first title a lot more engaging than this one. I could see that. The second one is Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Dropped a demo on Switch.
They did.
Yeah, I played that yesterday. For you guys who don't know, it is 2 missions and then a third that's like a boss battle mostly. And Steve, have you played this at all?
No, so I do have it installed. I do plan to play it today. I completely forgot that the demo released.
Yeah, so yeah, I played through it yesterday. You can get like maybe it doesn't take that long to get it. I think I got through it in like 20 minutes. It wasn't too crazy, 25 minutes. But overall, I think it does a good job of giving you a good glimpse of what this game could do. And the cool thing is pretty much everything you've seen in the trailer so far is actually available in the demo. And it's not until you finish the demo do you realize that this game has a crap ton more to offer than what has been shown so far. And that was the only thing. Was I love the post-apocalyptic, almost kind of like abandoned city look of it, at least what they've shown so far. But I was wondering, I was like, can they really extract a lot of time out of that? And so you go through the demo, they show you how the boss battles go, how general navigation is. The game is cute. It looks great on the OLED. It was running really solidly, but again, it's a Kirby game. But overall, I would say that it does have a lot more to offer than that, because at the very end, you get a new trailer that I don't think has been put on YouTube yet. There's not really spoilers, but it shows a whole bunch of new abilities that have not been shown, that are like really, really unique and completely change up the play style. And on top of that, the big thing that really sold it for me is they showed off glimpses of other worlds that exist in that game that are like dramatically different than that city. So it shows that this game is more akin, again, to an Odyssey than a very specific kind of like tailored Kirby adventure where it's like Kirby in this post-apocalyptic. Because my question was, I was like, okay, they have this setting that is like very non-Kirby. Like, what are they going to do narratively to justify that necessarily? Because Kirby games narratives are very minimal, if anything. Like, you kind of just walk to the right and you save your friends and you kind of float around and you call it a day pretty much. And I was wondering, like, what are they going to do in this one to switch that up so much? Because again, the backdrop is completely different. You're out of the normal kind of Kirby environments, and they take you out of that very early, and they drop you into this new place that's very grounded in reality, to the point that, like, if you're like walking around, there are points where you see like abandoned trash that you can like suck up cans and stuff like that, and you're taking over vending machines. Like, it's very grounded in that way in comparison to the previous titles. So it made me wonder, like, what is going on here narratively to tie this all together. And it shows that this kind of odyssey that no pun intended, that Kirby is on, is a lot more expansive than I thought it was. And so that kind of sold me on the game. You know, I was, by the end of the demo, I felt like, I'm like, okay, so everything they showed in the trailer was in the demo. So I think I'm good. I'm like, you know, like, I got to play it. It was fun. If I get the hankering to play it again, maybe I'll just play the demo again, but I'm like, I'm good. And then that trailer launched, and I was like, oh, they're like showing like different boss types. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know you were in the game. You know, return of older characters, a whole bunch of new characters, backdrops that look like giant castles and deserts, and I'm like, oh shit, like they're doing some cool stuff here. So that kind of sold me on the game, to be honest. I think it's coming out March 25th or something like that. So if that time is like a good time for me, yeah, I might jump into that game. But that definitely sold it for me. What I will say is that a lot of people were kind of thrown off by what the playstyle looked like, so they weren't sure, like, is this an open world like Kirby game? It's not. It's just the backdrop looks more open city-ish than previous ones. So it's more of a like camera perspective thing. You're not really able to like walk endlessly to the right, and there's not much explorability outside the realm of what you'd find in like maybe a 3D Mario game. I would say like Mario 3D Land is probably the closest thing that I would say would be. So like you still have the corridors that you're going through, but there are like different paths sometimes where you can like go above or you can go below or through a building, for example, depending on what abilities you have available to you. So if like you possess the car, and mouthful mode is still a wild thing to call it, but if you possess the car, you can like break through the building, or you could float above it, or sometimes they have things where you can go below it. So it offers a little bit of variability in the gameplay in that regards, but I wouldn't say it's like a top to bottom reinvention of what Kirby is. So that I just wanted to include that caveat, because I saw some people commenting like, oh my god, finally like the Odyssey of Kirby. And it's not really Mario Odyssey, because Mario Odyssey did have that explorability content way where it was more so more than just paths. Like you could really just walk around this open kind of playground, where this is not so much a playground. It's still the corridor system. It's just more robust, if anything. So I think it's an expansion on what Kirby is, more so than a reinvention, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it does.
And were you interested in this game at all?
Yeah, so you know, I'm actually a pretty huge Kirby fan. You know, I really did enjoy the last one, the first one we got on Switch, Star Allies.
Oh yeah.
My big complaint is the thing that I think most people complain about, is that we keep getting the same Kirby game, just remixed a little bit. You know, the Wispy Woods fight at the beginning, stuff like that. So I'm glad they did a demo. I think the game needed a demo, because there was sort of mystery about like what the game looks like moment to moment. I forgot that demo came out. I am actually really excited. I think I have it pre-ordered on Amazon. Amazon has a sale on it already, or had a sale on it. Yeah, I'm looking at it. I was able to get it $10 off on
awesome.
Amazon. So I'm excited for that. I think it's gonna be a nice, because by that time, I mean that's 2 weeks from now, roughly.
Yeah,
I will be done with my Elden Ring journey for now. Which that's gonna be a wild game to get into right after Elden Ring.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think it'll be a nice, like, sort of, yeah, I think it'll be a nice palate cleanser. It'll be nice to be able to play a game and just know what to do, what to go. And I've always found that world charming in Kirby. So I'm excited to try the demo out later today to see how I'm feeling even more about it. I'm excited though. I am excited. I full-fledged on plan on getting it.
Yeah, and I would say especially for you, like if you liked Star Allies, then this one's definitely going to get it done, because Star Allies I liked a lot too, but that was about as kind of straightforward of a Kirby game as you could get. And so this one, I think like they're trying to switch things up to even the point where like if you launch the demo, there's actually, I wouldn't call it a difficulty settings option, but there are 2 modes you can play it in. And one of which is you get a lot of health, and it's basically the standard kind of Kirby experience. And then the other one I think is a little tougher, that kind of helps you with collectability and stuff like that. But you maybe don't have as much health. But again, none of it is like difficult per se. Again, it's still Kirby, so I highly recommend anybody who has any little bit of curiosity about it, try out the demo, and I think the demo can give you a great idea of what the game can do overall. The next thing I played really quick is Majora's Mask on Switch. That finally came to the N64 collection. If you played any of the N64 games, you'll have a good idea of how it looks on Switch. On the OLED, I thought it looked great. Again, this is still one of my favorite games, or specifically one of my favorite Zelda games of all time. And so it's great to be able to play it at all in general. So in many ways, again, I'm like, it could be a little disappointing. It's like, man, I wish this was like the 3DS version that got like, all the tweaks and fixes. But at the same time, this game's still a super classic. It still has the save states. You can kind of play around with that to make it maybe a little bit more manageable. So you don't have to like grind through a walkthrough or anything like that. But overall, yeah, it still holds up well. No significant like performance issues that I've experienced. You can do a little bit of frame analysis, and I'm sure there are issues there. But overall, it's completely playable. It looks really good. No major complaints there. My major complaint of it is not Majora's Mask, but I just don't like this drip feed approach. I've never liked the drip feed approach that Nintendo has for this. So getting like this 1-2 games every other month thing is just not my thing. Fourth thing is actually a recommendation from you. Infernax finally got to it.
Yes.
And yeah, I love it pretty much as you expected. Yeah, it's pretty much Castlevania 2. No complaints whatsoever. It's giving me exactly what I need. It's got some of the modern modern touches, like the more frequent save states and stuff like that. But other than that, yeah, it's really, really fun. It looks great. I like the enemy design a lot. There's really interesting boss design. The world is really interesting. There's actually a pretty compelling narrative that's going on as well. So yeah, I like the game quite a bit, especially for kind of like a free Game Pass game. Only thing is I would love to play on this one on Switch, preferably. This is definitely kind of like a Switch title that I'd prefer to play, but at the same time, it's running great on Xbox, and I'm having a great time with it. So yeah, and Infernax is like a super recommend from me as well. I know you co-signed it last episode, and yeah, no, I'm super on board with this. This one's like a no-brainer for me. And then the last one, just because it was like a free PSN game, and I was like, all right, I'll play it. It was just like Sonic Team Racing. I played a little bit of that. And yeah, I don't know why. I was like, let me install it. It's free. Let me just play it. Yeah, I like the game. I mean, it's Sonic Team Racing. I mean, for you guys who have played it before, if you guys haven't played it before, it's like a Sonic kart racer. It is. And it's not like Mario Kart. I would always say, like, like you can fall into 2 categories. This is definitely more on the CTR side of kart racers. But yeah, no, I like it. I've always liked that like really robust like drift system that they had, where like it almost creates a lane that you can like go behind somebody and like whip past them. So that was always fun. And the team mechanic. And yeah, it looks great, runs great. So not much original takes there, because again, it's an older game, but I still find this game quite fun. I used to play it a little bit when it first came out. I bought it, and then I fell off of it almost immediately. So this was like a nice thing to kind of like pop back into now that I saw that it was in the PlayStation Store. But yeah, that was pretty much everything I've been playing. Just kind of dipping and diving all over the place.
No, yeah, super excited. I'm glad you liked Infernax. I meant to ask you actually off cam what you thought of Infernax. I didn't know if you had gotten time to get around to it. But
yeah, I didn't get to it until yesterday. So
yeah, what a game. What a game. All right, we can get right into the stories. The first one's a sort of update, something you and I have been sort of waiting on. The world's kind of been waiting on ever since the delay. The Steam Deck has released in a really weird way, because they announced that it released, but really the pre-orders the second stage of pre-orders went live is really the way I like to describe it. But so Valve's new and highly anticipated handheld, the Steam Deck, has released. Reception has been largely positive, with some minor stick drift issues being reported. According to the Valve designer Lawrence Yang, the drifting was caused by a software problem, a dead zone regression from a recent firmware update. However, the company has managed to find an easy solution to sort the Steam Deck's drift, with Yang tweeting, "We just shipped a fix to address the bug, so make sure you're up to date." So yeah, Steam Deck's out there. It's out there in the wild. We've seen, I've seen some pretty interesting hands-on. I'm a little wary about it because they surprisingly surprise some of the big influencers and sort of Steam fanboys are the ones who got their hands on it first. Not really surprised there, but so I'm interested to hear what we get more and more. I think it's super weird how it's like almost random what games are compatible, what games are not compatible. The second I heard the stick drift, I know that's a thing that for most people who, I remember the Switch went through that. I remember that DualSenses were really quick people were claiming quickly to get it. Again, I've had a Switch ever since launch. And I've had multiple Switches, and especially Joy-Con since. I've never suffered through any sort of stick drift. I also do not slam on most people. Some of these people will, try to see if they can get it to drift. Again, same with my DualSense. I do have my original DualSense, the one that I received before my PlayStation arrived. No stick drifting. So, I guess it's such a weird thing. So the first time I've ever heard a company being like, "No, it was a weird firmware update with the dead zone." And I've heard that in other things, but never for analog stuff. But so I'm glad they were able to quickly remedy that. By the time we get our hands on ours, most of that stuff will probably be sort of rubbed out and smoothed over. But it's exciting. I'm in the same boat as you. I believe we're in our Q2 waiting zone.
Yep.
I was in Q1. I don't know what happened. I had a whole big issue with that. Lost my spot. They gave me another spot in Q2, luckily. So we're hanging on there. But so what do you think of the whole Steam Deck release?
Yeah, no, I'm really, really excited. This is a device that I've been kind of keeping my eye on for quite some time. I have the pre-order just like you. It's been really exciting for me because this device, I know for some people it's kind of like, okay, it's a handheld PC. That's cool. Some people are going to play it. Some people are not, whatever. But for me, this fixes a ton of issues I've had, which is there's just been this light hole in the PC space where I don't have a robust PC setup to be able to play PC games. I've invested so much money into consoles and stuff like that. I just am not necessarily looking to buy a super high-end PC, at least right now. And so this is a really elegant solution for me. I also have always preferred handhelds. I've always just been the handheld guy. So a handheld PC is kind of like a dream come true for me. So I can have access to all those kind of like Steam games. So every time, like for example, Square Enix makes a boneheaded idiot decision to only put something on like PC and phones or whatever. Now I have that PC option available to me, and it allows for to play all those obscure games that are only available on PC and whatever, stuff like that. So I'm really, really excited about this, and I'm glad that they're really staying on top of some of these fixes. They have a stick drift fix already out, which is awesome. That I just like seeing it addressed to some degree, as opposed to like when there's like a stick drift issue and they're just like, oh, here, send in your Joy-Cons, and then 5 years later it's like, buy new Joy-Cons if it's a problem. So at least they're like, okay, we've identified the issue, we're gonna fix it, and we've deployed a fix for it. So hopefully that takes care of everybody who is experiencing issues with this. But yeah, I'm like really excited about this device, and I'll also say that for anybody who has any curiosity about this device, it really is like performance is like the concern, because that's my big thing. It's like, okay, they're have some really bold claims about this, because again, it's a portable PC, so there are like people playing like Horizon on it and Death Stranding. This is like crazy. So I wanted to see how these perform. There is an excellent Digital Foundry video that I highly recommend to anybody who is just curious about performance. And what I like about it is it gives you the pros and the cons. It's not just kind of like some of these videos that show all the awesome things it can do, like Forza, but also some of the areas that kind of choke it up a bit, like some of the sections of Horizon, stuff like that. It's just really interesting to see the limitations. There's some amazing features about this where like you can easily toggle on a kind of performance gauge in the corner so you can see the exact frame rate at any point. And then there's a quick toggle where you can limit games to 30 FPS for that more stable experience, which is amazing. So like, there's just a real lot of care that you can tell that Valve put into this, and it just makes me really excited. It makes me hope it does really well, for many reasons. I think I want this to do well because I would love to see Valve do multiple attempts at this and, you know, be a fixture in this space, specifically the kind of console hardware space. Even though I know they consider it a PC, I know you guys do it. You're in the console space now. Welcome, whether you like it or not. And also, I think this really does, and I know some people hate this comparison, but I think this really does light a fire under Nintendo's butt. Like, okay, like, for a long time, they were like, okay, we do the fun thing. We're not focused on the power thing. And it does put them in kind of a tricky position when somebody basically takes something that has a similar form factor, and not only exceeds them in performance, but blows by them. And everything the Switch can do right now, essentially with exception for like detachable Joy-Cons, the Steam Deck can do as well, down to things that are certainly not legal, but yeah, I've seen videos of people straight playing ARMS on Steam Deck.
Yep.
So, and again, I'm not saying necessarily like supporting piracy, especially of things that are readily available now. But what I'm saying is like, yeah, they're in a tricky position where it's like all of their things where it's like, okay, because it's a handheld device, there are limitations to what we can do in the power. Well, I mean, this is running Elden Ring now. You have a handheld that not only runs games that the Switch can't run or doesn't have on it, but also games that it does have. That is what makes them crazy. Now, when you see Witcher running on the Steam Deck, you're like, holy crap, like. That's when the discrepancy, it's like, okay, so now there's a new standard for what handheld gaming is possible right now. And I want to see Nintendo's response to that, because to some degree I feel like they have to. That doesn't mean that the next Switch has to be this absolute powerhouse, but it, I think, makes that refresh all the more necessary now, because if you're going to be playing this, and we're about to talk about it, but this next Pokemon game that is running at 30 frames per second and then has a resolution of 144p, and then somebody else right next to you has a Steam Deck for a little bit more money, because you can get the low SKU for I think like $399, as opposed to the OLED, which is what, $350, for $399, and they're running Forza. I think that is, and I'm not just Forza, but like 60 frames per second Forza. That is what I think, that discrepancy is a little spooky, and I would like to see Nintendo respond to that. Now, do I think this is the Nintendo killer? No, of course I'm not as deluded. We've seen that conversation before. I saw people saying that on Twitter. I'm like, guys, you're giving me like Vita flashbacks. Please don't say that, because we know we know what Nintendo's capable of. Stop. Yeah. No, this is not a Nintendo killer, but it certainly puts them in a position where it's like, now it's easier to play Nintendo's back catalog on a non-Nintendo system than the Switch, which is like a bad look. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be one of my most played consoles once I have it. It's probably going to be one of my most played things, period. Because there's certainly games that I either bump into on console that I'd probably rather play on Steam Deck now, and then there are stuff certainly on Switch that I'd rather play on Steam Deck as well. So I could totally see it kind of being my go-to thing, with exception for exclusives on other platforms. But kind of like, if it's any kind of indie title, if it's any kind of older title, you know, that is available on Steam, instead of kind of like dredging up old discs, I'm definitely more willing to play like Jet Set Radio, for example, on Steam Deck than I am probably going to play it on Xbox. So it takes a lot of what I used to like about the Switch, what I used to like about the Xbox, what I used to like about the PlayStation, and now just putting it onto a handheld device. So I could totally see this being my go-to thing eventually, personally.
No, absolutely. And I think that's going to be a big thing. I do like the sort of competition it's going to push Nintendo to have, just because of the library of games that Steam already has. And they're not all compatible. I'm looking at the Great on Deck part that they have on their website. I mean, the first one on the list is Elden Ring, which is, whatever it is, it's the biggest game right now.
Oh, Elden Ring doesn't work on it?
No, Elden Ring does.
Oh, it does. Okay, cool.
So
Just
the biggest game, the biggest game One of the biggest games of the year is gonna be compatible on that. You can't play anything. You can play only, I think, the first Dark Souls on Switch. That's it. God of War's on the list. Witcher 3 in. When you're gonna see Witcher 3 run on the Steam Deck compared to what we get on the I've seen the Switch version of Witcher. It's it's one of the worst things I've ever seen. Yeah. It's really bad. Like we were saying, Horizon's on here. Control, Sekiro is gonna be on here. Yeah. Dark Souls 3. There's just so many games that it's just not only will they be on there, but they won't be on there on. They will be obviously scaled down to what the Steam Deck does, but they aren't handicapped by like what really is the power issue in the Switch, because it's gonna be nuts. I mean, I'm looking at this to have Tales of Arise on the go. I will finally be able to, I've seen people
Game Pass now,
having access to Game Pass on there. The Portal games are already on here. They're being re-released on Switch, and I'm gonna tell you they're probably gonna run pretty bad on Switch, even though those are older games. Yeah. So it's gonna be really interesting, and it's gonna put me to that point, where my Switch will only be my Nintendo machine. And it's not like that right now. Now it's my Nintendo indie machine, and Steam sometimes get these indie games way earlier than consoles do, including Nintendo. So it's just going to be overall and cheaper. Let me tell you, you're going to start experiencing those Steam
sales. I've heard about them. They're crazy.
I got the whole Deus Ex franchise, not only the 2 new games and the older games that were, I guess, original PC games. I got everything for like $10. It's insane. It's insane. I didn't even want those games, but I just
on Switch those would be $30 each.
Exactly, and they would be running
awfully
terribly. So I can see and expect the Steam Deck to really take over those big games, especially with the way they're talking about cloud saving feature working. I will now have to start debating what games I want on PC, just because of the ability to really take it on the road with me.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is really going to shake things up, so long as like Valve is really like dedicated to it. And so I'm just really excited to see what the kind of ripple effects of this is, because like we've certainly seen consoles that maybe don't sell the most, but certainly have like insane ripple effects of it. The ones that I kind of think of are the Vita. I think of the Dreamcast, and I think of the original Xbox. None of those were the main sellers, but think about their impact to the game industry overall. And I feel like even if it doesn't sell the best, which I think it's going to sell very well, but and very well comparatively. Do I think this is moving like 90 million units or anything? No, of course not. But I think like it's gonna do what it needs to do to deem it a success in Valve's eyes, I think. And I think this is gonna shake up. I think its impact is going to be more so on the kind of shake-up of the industry that it does, and less so the kind of amount of raw sales, because I feel like this is going to really kind of reframe what it means to be a PC and even like a PC player, and then on top of that also what it means to be a handheld, honestly, when they're essentially those concessions aren't really, because that was always the thing where it's like, okay, like it like doesn't look the best, but it's a handheld game. You remember that it's like always, it's a handheld game. But now you have something that is very easily able to run new games. Now, at the highest fidelity, of course not, but like it can run newer games. Like there's nothing stopping you from, like when Sony announces this brand new game to like PC, like, hey, we're moving this, your Steam Deck's going to be able to run that. So that means some of the best titles on PlayStation, some of the best titles on Xbox are now fully playable on a handheld device. So I think that is really exciting too, where it's like those concessions are no longer necessary, and also generations are blurred, because that was the best thing about the PC space, where it's like if you get a new PC, it doesn't lock you away from playing older PC games. Where in the console space, unfortunately, every generation there's that reset, unless they work hard to have parity with previous generations. So the cool thing about this Steam Deck is, and you have access from games from all the way back into 78 to 2021, which is the amazing thing. So there's no real generational barriers, only so much performance barriers, and it only gets easier to run things the older it gets. You know what I mean? As opposed to once upon a time where it's like, oh, why can't I play this game? It's like, oh, there are license things or this or that that's keeping it from re-releasing, and it's virtual console, and now we have this, and this eShop's getting shut down, and this, where it's like, hey, if it's on Steam, if it's or basically more, not even if it's on Steam, if it's playable on a computer, you can play it on the Steam Deck, which I think is just an amazing thing that's going to open up so many opportunities for me specifically of so many games that are kind of like lost to time. So if you don't think I am absolutely firing up Mother 3 with the swiftness, with the fan translation, you best believe I am, and there's nothing stopping me now. So I'm really hype about it.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. And so I'm hoping just everything goes smoothly, and I also can't wait to just see how big this system is.
Yeah,
I've seen different comparisons. It's a hefty boy.
All right, so second story, and all the Switch talk, but now we got something very positive, I think, about Switch. Pokemon Day 2022 happened on February 27th, and it came with lots of new Pokemon announcements, but the largest of which was the announcement of the 9th Gen games, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Release date is currently in late 2022, and we haven't seen too much besides the 3 starters and a glimpse at the world. But yeah, I was actually not expecting this announcement at all, because I fully thought that Arceus was going to be their major contribution from main Game Freak this year. It was, and especially once I played it, I felt personally, I was like, okay, this is not a spin-off. This is like this is where they're going with things. I didn't think that they were never going to go back to the original format, but I was like, okay, this is their game for the year. And I guess I stand corrected. They fully intend on releasing kind of a traditional 2-set color games. And I'm really excited about that. And the thing I'm most excited about it is not just a fast turnaround, which is cool, commendable, good for them. It's also that it seems like this, yes, is a traditional Pokemon game, but it seems to have like learned a lot from Arceus. So the way that the world is set up, the way navigation seems to be set up, and the way kind of Pokemon kind of wander around the world is definitely more reminiscent of Arceus, even then more so than Sword and Shield. So I think that's actually really cool, because that was the big thing, is I actually really loved the way Arceus was kind of set up in terms of not only the world, but like the way like catching Pokemon was, the way your UI was. Like, there's just lots of things that I liked that I found much easier to play, and like a nice, more fluid kind of evolution of the Pokemon series. And so I was hoping that if they ever kind of go back to the traditional format, that they take all the benefits of Arceus and meld it into kind of maybe the more traditional formatting. So obviously you're probably not going to be leveling up as fast by just catching Pokemon like you do in Arceus, because again, filling the Pokemon, the Pokedex is the main focus of that game. This one is obviously probably going to go back to the gym system and kind of just grinding, playing, battling against trainers primarily. But if you give me that kind of freedom to roam around, even some light crafting, collecting different kind of resources and then kind of catching Pokemon in the wild, I think would just be an excellent addition to the kind of traditional format. I don't have many comments more beyond that. We've seen the world. Obviously, in the trailer, it was running awfully, but that's not the first time that it's happened.
Yeah.
They kind of always do that, and I don't know why, but every time they drop like a first look at a Pokemon game, it's like chugging along at like 15 frames per second. I'm like, why do you guys show this off? It makes you guys look crazy, when I know for a fact that the final game will not run that bad. But all things considered, the starters are the starters. It's kind of like the same kind of 3 format, just kind of swapped around the animal types. And the world looks cool. Not much to report there, but overall, I'm positive about what they're showing so far, and I like the whole Scarlet Violet name convention thing. That's kind of a creative way. It's cool, kind of seeing them actually just return to something as simple as just like a color, as opposed to like swords and shields and all types of stuff like
Sun
that.
and Moon.
Yeah, Sun and Moon. It's cool for them to go to just back to the color concept. So yeah, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I watched the Pokemon presentation. This is the last thing I expected, Gen 9. I really didn't think so. Everything else I knew we were going to get updates to Pokemon Go. I knew we were going to get updates to Arceus, and I knew all the spin-off Pokemon, the MOBA and the cafe thing.
Oh yeah,
I knew that was coming. So I was actually very, very surprised when they were showing this. And for a moment, I was in the boat with everybody else. I was looking at the comments. The way the trailer starts, it made it seem that possibly we were getting a Detective Pikachu 2 game, not movie. it did, you got a guy being kind of snoopy. It's a realistic thing, and I'm like, oh wow, is this? At first I was like, no, but I started thinking, I'm like, maybe this is, or some sort of port with enhancements. So I was actually very shocked. But yeah, everything else looks really good. Yes, I know that the game looked like it was running pretty bad, but I'm in the same boat as you. They always show it that way. I don't know why. You didn't have to put those. There's like a point where like you see some birds flying and they just look terrible. Like they're so choppy. But yeah, it's so insane. And I always thought that Legends Arceus was going to be sort of the testing ground to see what people liked, what they didn't like. It looks like they're all in on that sort of format because, as we see, a lot of this looks like Arceus. On the website, they talk about having seamless wilderness and without borders and things like that. So it's going to be a little bit more. There'll be a little bit more, section based probably, like as in Arceus. But the fact that it's going to be as close as an open world as I think a Pokemon game needs to be. I do miss some of those formalities in Arceus. Again, I liked Arceus as its spin-off. I do miss just a little bit more in-depth battle system. Again, it's just a little more casual, and it looks like that's what we're going to get here. I do like that it's sort of, I guess almost sort of, it's got some Spanish themes with this, at least with the Pokemon names we get. With I forget what the green the grass. I know it sounds like it sounds like a cat, but I forget what it was. And I know the fire is Fuecoco or something like that. Yeah, but so and I forget what the grass one, but I remember it sounds like you were saying gatito in Spanish.
Oh. Okay.
It's I gotta look it up really quick because it's driving me nuts. But Sprigatito is whatever is the grass
starter. Yeah, that does sound like a Spanish theme.
Yeah, Fuecoco, and then Quaxley is the duck water.
Okay.
So it's so I seems like they're having some sort of Spanish undertone, and I think Sword and Shield is very sort of England UK style. So they always choose a section. So yeah, everything I see looks good. I was like really shocked. Again, I liked the simple of just choosing Scarlet and Violet. I think that I've always kind of liked that. I do like this. Apparently, you can even get a different starting outfit depending on which version you get.
Oh.
So it's gonna be pretty cool. I am surprised it's this year. Let me tell you, I don't ever really recall them delaying a Pokemon game, at least publicly. So for them to come out being late 2020, late 2022, you're assuming whatever it is, September, October, November-ish time. It's really
probably November more than anything.
Yeah. It feels just so almost recent. Like we were saying, we got Brilliant Diamond and Pearl at the end of last year. Then we got Arceus. And now you're getting the next big step. I really did think we were at least another year off from a Gen 9. But I'm not mad at it. I didn't get Brilliant Diamond or Pearl. So I literally I'm going to go from Arceus. I won't play Arceus from... I think I'm almost done with Arceus. As soon as I beat it, I probably won't play another Pokemon game until Scarlet comes out. So I'm really excited for that. And just an interesting way. I was surprised. Nintendo doesn't do too much that... Nintendo and Pokemon... don't do too much that surprised me in a good way. So it was a nice change of pace.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, especially with, and I apologize, I can't remember the team's name offhand, but the people who did make Brilliant Diamond and Pearl, it makes me wonder, like, are they going to continue that relationship, and are we just going to get inundated with like new Pokemon games, every kind of 6 to 7 months? That would be really interesting. I think it's overkill, but it makes me wonder if that was kind of just like a one-off experiment. Because again, we're getting hit over the head here. So within almost a year period, we'll get close to almost 3 Pokemon games. Because if you go from like November 2021 to November 2022, and they might just miss that because I think Brilliant Diamond and Pearl was like October or something like that. But it was pretty close. So yeah, no, it's just. It's just crazy to see this turnaround. It makes me wonder, like, are they gonna like Activision Pokemon and just like have like different teams working on a new Pokemon game at all times, just roll it out like a Call of Duty title, be like, here, this is your turn, so you're gonna get a main Game Freak game now. Oh no, this other team's gonna go. It's interesting. I don't think they're gonna do that because I think Nintendo's quality bar is like higher than that to allow something like that to happen. Because I just don't think they could innovate that fast, and I think Nintendo is very much like, whether they succeed or not, I think they at least try to innovate with new iterations of titles. They try. They don't always succeed, but and so it makes me wonder what their plans are for kind of like the rollout schedule of Pokemon, because once upon a time, once a year, it was pretty clean. It was around fall, and then you kind of go from there. Where now it seems like they're playing around with not only frequency but time of year. Arceus came out in January. Brilliant Diamond was, I think, October, November. And then Scarlet Violet is going to be back to like November. So like, will there be another one in January after that? Like, it just makes me wonder, like, how are they gonna handle this going forward? Or was that just kind of a one-off? Like, this is just happened to be where things landed, where maybe Arceus was supposed to originally come out in the fall but was not ready, and so they kind of had this other team that could whip up something real quickly, kind of an old style remake, chibi, cute characters. Pumped that out, bumped it to January, and then now we're just back on track. That's very possible too. That Arceus was actually like a delay that they probably just didn't publicize. That's possible.
Yeah, that makes more sense too. I do actually believe. I don't know if I believe or if it's more I'm hoping that this is a sort of one-time deal that we get. Like you said, within a 12-month span, we're getting three major Pokemon games essentially. So yeah. I do hope this is a one-time deal, because I don't want.
That's over.
Come on. Let's imagine launching 3 Call of Duties in 1 year.
They would if they could.
Which we're sort of getting actually this year, but I guess that's a different day. We'll talk about that. Yeah. So Nintendo showed off what they needed to do. PlayStation on the small end back here. So the next story, we got a PSVR2 reveal. So we finally got a first look at PlayStation's next generation VR headset, the PSVR2, as we know what it's called, which features its white exterior following the overall aesthetic of the PS5 console and a white DualSense. No release date or window still, but we did get finally just a straight look at the actual headset. It looks like a VR headset. It's really hard to compare. It does look like a slimmed down, it does look like a revision of the headset that we know PSVR to have now. I do like that one cable, not just one cable straight to the console, as we discussed before. No lights on it. The controllers, we've really liked it. I think it was obviously this was going to be the color scheme, because this is the color scheme PlayStation's going with for the PS5. But it looks great. I do like that. I always do believe that the PSVR is the most comfortable VR headset. I've tried different ones, and some a little bit too tight and pinchy and a little annoying to adjust to your head. I've always liked the PSVR part of it, and it looks like it's the same, which is obviously redesigned, probably more ergonomic and everything like that. So it's super exciting to see it. This is something, though I'm not in a VR headspace right now where I want to play a bunch of stuff in VR, when you see just some shiny new tech, you kind of just want to get your hands on it. Of course, with that PlayStation symbol on there, I'm really excited. Again, we discussed on how you aren't super into the VR world, but what did you think of the reveal of the actual headset?
Yeah, and as we've talked about before, it's like a reluctant. Like, I wish I was able to get into the VR world. Just get way too motion sick. But yeah, no, I like the way it looked overall. I actually didn't. I was surprised, but I was also kind of surprised that I was surprised, because I actually didn't really. I was like, how else did I expect this to look, to be honest?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it looks clean. It looks sleek. What I like about it is that when I remember they revealed the immediate VR headset, or the first VR headset, I was immediately kind of like, okay, that's cool. I can totally see where they need to like streamline some things. Like, it was almost immediately apparent, like, okay, like, it's not, they can't keep it looking like this forever. This is definitely a concession. Like, the reaction to the first VR headset was definitely very similar to the first time I saw the original iPod, where I'm like, oh, okay, that's really cool tech. That's thick as hell. Like, I can definitely see where this is going forward, because the form factor is a little nuts. And so, like, with the cable management and stuff like that, I was like, okay, eventually they're going to clean that up, but this looks kind of crazy right now. And this looks the way I think it finally kind of needs to look. The white aesthetic overall, like, I think it matches really well. I was never the massive proponent of having the white PS5. Now, my PS5 is completely black. And so my PS5 finally kind of looks the way that I want it to look. So I'm not the big, like, white aesthetic guy. Like, if I could buy a VR headset, I'd prefer it in black personally. But overall, I think it looks sleek, clean. I like the overall aesthetic of it. Once it's on, I'm sure it's gonna have like a nice little like blue light touches underneath it and stuff like that. That will make it kind of fit in with everything. I love the controllers. So yeah, I like what they're doing over there. And we went over the specs last time, so we don't have to like rehash that. But overall, I think this thing's a little powerhouse. And at this point, I'm really interested in what their timetable is for this. Is this like a 2022 thing? At this point, the fact that they're kind of revealing it and showing it off tells me that maybe they're aiming for a late 2022 thing, just because it would seem to be a little bit much to start the marketing cycle well over a year out. So it makes me wonder, like if this is at least currently planned for 2022. And then also makes me wonder what the price point is going to be for this. Again, every time I see this thing, it looks clean. It just that 4K display. I think it's like, is it OLED or something like that too?
I believe
it's like a serious screen that they have on this. So it just makes
it is an OLED.
Yeah, you see a 4K OLED is just insane. And so it just makes me wonder, like, how expensive is this thing going to be? So as of right now, I think like the big questions I have yet to still be answered. But I will say that, so far I'm really liking what I'm seeing, and I'm just, to be honest, most of all, above the aesthetic kind of look of it, is just I'm glad to see them still dedicated to the VR space overall, because again, I appreciate the fact that they came in with fair expectations for themselves. They weren't setting these ridiculous standards for themselves. So they understood the space. They understood what like success versus non-success even looks like in this space, and what the numbers look like accordingly for that. And they're dedicated, and they're going to make it work, because I feel like they really believe in not necessarily where it is right now, but where it can be one day. And they really want to be names associated in that conversation. And I can really respect that, even if it's not necessarily a medium that I'm going to personally invest in, despite my willingness to do so. So yeah, overall, I'm really feeling positive about this story.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm really excited to get my hands on it. Just like you said, all this tech they're promising, I need to see it in real time. The dates, the fact that they haven't said that it's not this year or it is this year, makes me feel like they maybe don't know yet, that they're sort of still playing, trying to feel out the ecosystem out there.
Yeah, the COVID stuff too. It makes
the COVID
slippery
stuff too, and we know shortages on all sorts of techs are all over the place right now. So I'm thinking they're keeping it open for maybe a launch sometime in this fall. I probably do think around this time next year probably is more that sweet spot, February, March, April of 2023. Yeah. I think this is probably the latest we'll see it.
Yeah, and of course, it all also depends on like what their internal timetables are for like games and stuff like that too. To find a nice good spot to throw in a VR title. Also to have the VR title available for them. I know they have this really robust Horizon title that they're going to launch with it. So I would imagine they want to also launch the hardware when they have really quality software to launch with it, because I think that's just a massive thing. You don't want to launch a brand new hardware SKU and then basically be like, this is just, we don't have anything new really, but you could play all your old stuff better. That is never a great selling thing, because that reminds me a lot of the Series X launch attempt, where it's like, it doesn't play anything new, but you can play old things better. So I'm really hoping that they kind of sync that up really well and have at least a couple titles brand new day one with the new hardware.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Oh yeah, so yeah. Also, their killer app is gonna be Horizon,
for sure.
Call it the Mountain, and you probably don't want to release two Horizon games in the same year, but maybe you do. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, you want to have space for things to breathe. We don't know what their fall looks like right now.
God of War somewhere.
Yeah, God of War is gonna be somewhere in there somewhere, and obviously they don't want to like stomp on that because that's a major big deal, or vice versa. They don't want necessarily all the PlayStation conversation to be in the God of War and not on their brand new VR headset, even though these are very different peripherals. I think it's important to have like those kind of dedicated marketing things. So time will tell, and once we have more news, we can kind of bring it up on here and talk to you guys about it. So yeah, the last story is a Bobby Kotick update by Stephen Totillo. I know there's a lot of like curiosity about how this was gonna play out with the Microsoft acquisition and just Activision being this controversial entity overall. And I personally, and you definitely felt the same way, that like when if you have any degree of knowledge about the corporate world, you knew that he was probably, at the very least, even if he doesn't step down, he was going to get like a stupid payout related to this. And so it seems like that is absolutely the case. So in many ways, this story is kind of like an "I told you so." But so let's start. There are big potential payouts ahead of the controversial Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick. According to extensive SEC filings about Microsoft's planned $69 billion acquisition of the company, Kotick has faced scrutiny and calls for his resignation over widespread sexual misconduct allegations at Activision Blizzard, but appears to set to profit. Microsoft and Activision proposed that Kotick could receive as much as $22 million in stock in July or later if Activision's board sees improvement in company culture, which, surprise, surprise, it's definitely going to, at least on paper. For the end person, I doubt it, but I'm sure on a paperwork standpoint, yeah, he's getting that money. Measured improvements would include the implementation of zero-tolerance harassment plan and increase in hiring women and non-binary people. Kotick took a pay cut in October in response to the company's scandals and said he was foregoing bonuses until the board saw improvement. The filing also indicates that the board may extend Kotick's contract by 12 months beyond its current March 2023 expiration. Kotick has not been expected to remain at the company long after the merger, a source told Axios. Ina Fryed earlier this year. Should Kotick be fired without cause by Microsoft, he'll get a $15 million golden parachute according to the filing's compensation proposal. So to kind of reframe this and kind of summarize this overall. So basically, from Bobby Kotick's standpoint, worst case scenario for him, he gets fired by Microsoft and gets a $15 million payout. Chances are, if he sticks around, he probably will get extension because he will be seen by the board as less so the guy that allowed for this super toxic, disgusting workplace, and more so the guy who turned it around because he's this great, good guy. And so he's going to get $22 million in stock at that point in July if he gets that extension, because his contract will be up in March 2023, the following year. So, yeah, chances are, or not even chances are, guarantee he's going to eat off of this anyways, no matter what. Because, again, $50 million ain't chump change. And even though he took the pay cut, we're talking about CEOs' wages, and CEOs' wages are the most ridiculous things on earth. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars here in stock holdings and just standard salary. So yeah, for all you guys who are kind of wondering how this was going to play out, it looks like it's probably going to play out incredibly advantageous for Bobby Kotick. Even if he chooses to step down one way or another, he's going to be paid and be able to sit on that money for quite some time. So he'll be set for some time, life if he wants. Yeah, what was your thoughts about this? Because for me, I was like disappointed but not surprised at all. So what'd you think?
Yeah, it's a win-win for Bobby Kotick, and it's a lose-lose for us, for everyone else, literally, especially everyone who suffered under his rule, basically. Yeah, we knew this is how it was gonna be. Essentially, we didn't know the finite details. We know that Bobby Kotick is out at some point. All this new stuff about him being maybe having to stick around for another 12 months, just to get his $22 million in stock, or again, if he probably will meet in the middle somewhere and leave or whatever, and that's when he's getting his golden parachute, which is again just terrible for him. Well, considering everything that happened under his ruling here, it's just terrible. It really is just that's all I keep saying. It's just how terrible is this that he's gonna get, at worst case scenario, he's getting $15 million from Microsoft. And that's not considering him having to probably sell his stocks, or it is. It's just like he's not worried, and it is unfortunate. I do hope down the line he gets hit with at least having to go to court for some of this stuff. It's just so hard because we know that he has so many people on the board that he put there because he did save Activision back then, and now we're seeing it that there's kind of twisting the story, because originally the word out there was that Activision Blizzard went to Microsoft for basically help and for this proposal. We know that due to that document leak a couple weeks ago that's actually false. Microsoft went there apparently a couple days after the original story broke of Bobby Kotick, with an offer, which rubs me the wrong way. It makes me just be like, Microsoft, kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth. We love Phil Spencer, but he's also just sort of mixing signals out there. We all remember the evaluating our relationship, and that's technically after they already give him a big old offer. So it is unfortunate. I can't wait for this situation not to go away, because I think this situation needs to be out in the public, because I think it's going to show other companies that this can't happen, it won't happen. But it is just so unfortunate that Bobby Kotick's literally going to just be sitting pretty somewhere without a worry in the world, when you had people go through probably some of the hardest times in their lives and threatened people, and he's going to be, 15 million at worst case. He's getting 15 million on top of the money he has now. It is just an insane story. I do hope at some point we get a true sort of documentary and investigation on this, because there's a lot of scandal, and there's a lot of these allegations. There's just so much there that people need to see, and that's where I really hope comes through.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say, kind of most of all, just think of like the message this sends to especially like the victims of this, where it's like, not only can this guy turn a blind eye and foster a culture of literal sexual assault. We're not talking about like this guy said a slimy remark. Like, we're talking about like sexual assault charges brought against certain employees, and he turns a blind eye to this, and he fosters this really disgusting culture. And not only can you do that, but guess what? You could profit off of it. You could walk away with a nice amount of money from that. So, like, just think about, like, and this is what they're talking about when they talk about, like, the fundamental, structural, cultural issues in some of these industries. And you could say society at large, but specifically, in this case, like, these industries that are just toxic almost from the top to bottom. And it all starts with management in many ways. And if they don't discipline these people who foster these things, it's going to continue. Because think of the message, like that this just sent the message to so many nasty dirtbag CEOs and their little cronies that they put on these things, that basically not only can you get away with it, but you can turn around and actually get a little bit of profit behind it. And so that tells me that, at least for the time being, until the powers that be really decide to like stomp this out in a real way, and you know, in many ways, unfortunately, it seemed like Microsoft was a bit in a position to actually make some change here, and opted not to. And you can speculate as to why. I think a lot of people are scared to probably do anything or speak out too much, because it can reflect badly on them. All these game companies will be quick to comment and express their support in cases where it's like, it's like the trend. It's the trend to go in that direction. But if it requires any like real kind of like internal looks into yourself, like that's when these companies get a little bit like spooked out. And so certainly, yeah, it just definitely seems like the case where it's like real change is just gotten delayed that much longer because they decided not to really chase this the way that they should have. And like it's silly where like if there are conversations about like, hey, you guys are working them too long, they should unionize. The game industry, rallies, oh yeah, you're right. We should transformative change. Let's get around that. Absolutely. But then it's like, hey, we should stop doing a culture of like sexually assaulting women. They're like, well, there are corporate policies about why. Like that's how like toxic this is. So I'm hoping that things change. But the problem is like until this problem is like really taken seriously, and taken seriously doesn't mean like a couple Kotaku articles. It means like firing these people and bringing people on charges if possible, and HR working on behalf of not just the company but like helping these individuals. That's when I think the change comes. But in the meantime, Bobby Kotick's gonna have his nice little golden palace, so shout out to him, I guess.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's still so crazy to me.
Yeah, but I'm sure, again, this is evolving just because, and the Bobby Kotick portion might not. He'll eventually leave, probably, and so that'll be the end of that story. But keep in mind, yeah, Activision, in this whole Activision Blizzard Microsoft thing, that's still kind of in process, so we're going to get more developments there, and just curious to see if there's any degree of restructuring. I wouldn't be surprised if there's none, but that's something worth, I think, keeping the eye on, which is just like, does Microsoft push for any change? Because they've expressed that they have their own kind of internal standards and what they expect, but from what they've communicated, they have a relatively hands-off approach to their acquisitions. They try not to shuffle things around too much. If you look at like Bethesda as well, and so it makes me wonder that like they bought a super toxic company, but if their policy on previous acquisitions indicates their future approach with Activision, then they probably won't do anything, chances are, and they'll probably just really kind of like nudge them like, hey, don't make us look too bad, because when you screw up, it makes us look bad. That's probably like an extent of things in my guess. And you have to keep in mind, like, I love Phil Spencer, but again, he's a marketing guy. He's not like a good faith warrior on the side of justice to help things. Like he's a CEO. He is a marketing guy who is running a company. He's not like running a nonprofit. So it doesn't, though I would love to see him do the right thing. Like, do I expect that? Not necessarily. I want that. And I personally refuse to play Activision games. But it doesn't surprise me that, like, you know, in many ways kind of corporate entities protect their own. And then you could chalk that up into the corporate world. You could chalk that up into just a specific industry, and you could chalk that up into broader kind of like sociological issues, like, you know, like men protecting themselves. That happens as well, and that's not an insignificant factor here as well. That's something that maybe it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, but I think it's also worth noting. So yeah, it's something we'll stay on top of. I'm sure it's not the last time that it will come up with, because there are kind of broader societal pushes, and the game industry in many ways is lagging behind that. So I'm sure there will always be the pressure, at least externally, to kind of get the game industry moving on all this stuff. So hopefully we get better news next time. Hate to leave the podcast off on a negative news, but it is very important stuff to also kind of like bring up as kind of just overall games coverage, I would say.
No, I definitely agree with you on that.
All right, guys. So that was this episode of the NeoVintage podcast. We will be back not next week, but the week after, with a brand new episode for you guys, with a whole bunch of the hottest news stories out there in the industry. So this is Jabril, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope you guys enjoyed.
And this is the NeoVintage podcast. See you guys.